Hi there, and welcome to the Somewhere Between Here and Healing podcast. I'm Viv, your host and fellow traveler on this journey of navigating life after growing up with a narcissistic parent. Together, we'll explore the messy, the funny, and the downright unbelievable stories of family, life, and self discovery. Please let it be known I am not a therapist nor claim to be an expert in any way. I am simply someone who's been through it, still figuring things out, and I'm here to share my story with you. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's get this thing started. Welcome back, everyone. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Whether you're tuning in while walking, driving, or just taking a moment for yourself. As always, this space is for healing, clarity, and real conversations. And today's topic is one, well, like many, that is especially close to my heart. We're diving into something that so many of us carry deeply: empathy. What is it? Why so many of us identify as empaths, and how this beautiful trait, this gift, can sometimes become the very thing that gets us stuck in painful patterns, especially when it comes to relationships with narcissists. If you've ever felt like you feel too much, or if you stayed in a relationship longer than you should have because you could see their pain or understand their wounds, or hoped your love would be enough to heal someone, this episode is for you. I want to share something personal right off the bat. I am an empath. I've always been someone who can walk into a room and immediately sense what's going on beneath the surface. I can feel shifts, undercurrents, the unspoken words. And for a long time, I wore that as a badge of honor. I can handle it, I told myself. I'll absorb it so others don't have to. But what I didn't realize is that unchecked empathy, empathy without boundaries, was quietly burning me out. It made me a magnet for emotional takers, for people who didn't give back, for situations where my softness was mistaken for weakness. And that's what we're going to unpack today. Because empathy isn't the problem, it is part of your power. The key is learning how to protect it, direct it, and most importantly, not abandon yourself in the process. So let's start with the basics. What is empathy really? At its core, empathy is our ability to understand and feel what someone else is going through. It's that instinctive thing that happens when someone's maybe hurting and you feel it in your chest, or when someone's joy makes you light up right alongside them. It's more than sympathy, more than just saying, I'm sorry you're going through that. It is really being with them in it. Now, there are actually two main kinds of empathy: emotional and cognitive. Emotional empathy is what most of us think of right away. It is that felt experience. You sense someone's sadness and suddenly you're holding it with them. It's not just understanding their pain, you feel it. Cognitive empathy, on the other hand, is a bit more mental. It's the ability to see someone else's perspective, to understand why they feel the way they do, even if you don't feel it yourself. Think of it like putting yourself in someone else's shoes, but from the head, not the heart. Both types matter, and they're part of what makes human connection so beautiful and deep. Now, let's look at how this ties into narcissism, because here's where the contrast really comes into focus. Narcissists are often emotionally disconnected. They might have a basic understanding of how emotions work. They might even mirror them to manipulate you at times, but they're often missing that true feeling within. This lack of empathy isn't just a quirk, it's one of the core traits of narcissistic personality structures. They may fake empathy at times, especially in the beginning during love bombing. They'll say the right things, give the impression that they really get you, but over time, you can start to notice that's hollow. When you're in pain, they're impatient. When you need comfort, they twist it to make it about them. And if you're someone who feels deeply, that absence can be confusing because you're constantly trying to bridge the gap. You might find yourself over explaining, justifying, or bending yourself to be understood. That's empathy trying to operate in a space where it's not being matched. There's also a real biological basis to empathy, though we won't get too deep into any science. Just know that things like mirror neurons in our brains actually help us feel what others feel. It's part of our wiring. Some people are naturally more attuned than others, often because of personality, but also because of environment and upbringing. And if you're someone who had to be hyper aware of emotions growing up, maybe in a home where you had to read the room for safety or peace, you probably developed a heightened sense of empathy. It can become a survival skill. And that's not a flaw, that's adaptation, and it's powerful. But you need to be safe enough to use it wisely. Now that we've laid the groundwork for what empathy is, let's talk about why so many survivors of narcissistic abuse identify as empaths and how that plays into the bigger picture. So, why is it that so many survivors of narcissistic abuse identify as empaths? It's not a coincidence. In fact, it's a pattern. And if you're listening right now and nodding your head, it's probably because you've felt this, that deep sensitivity, that intuitive sense of what others are feeling, that drive to help, fix, to make peace. So let's start with some common traits of empaths. Empaths are highly sensitive, not just emotionally, but often physically and energetically. We notice tone shifts in conversation. We pick up on things that go unsaid. We feel with people, not just for them. Many of us are deeply intuitive. We can tell something's off even when someone's smiling. And we often carry a strong internal drive to help, heal, or ease someone else's discomfort, even if that means putting our own needs second. Now, here's where it gets deeper. A lot of that empathy doesn't come out of nowhere. For many of us, like I mentioned before, it was trained into us, and not necessarily consciously, but as that form of survival. If you grew up in a household where emotions were unpredictable, where you had to walk on eggshells, or where your emotional needs were minimized, you may have learned to tune into other people as a form of protection. You figured out early on that being aware, being good, helpful, accommodating was safer. You learned that reading the emotional temperature of a room could help keep the peace and potentially keep you from being hurt. So, empathy becomes more than just a personality trait, it can become a survival strategy. That's part of why, later in life, when a narcissist comes along with all their intensity, charm, and brokenness, you might feel an almost magnetic pull. It's not just about love, it's that something in your nervous system that recognizes the chaos and thinks, I know how to handle this. That can lead to something we call trauma bonding, where your brain starts to associate extreme emotional highs and lows with connection, that push and pull, the cycles of love bombing and devaluation, the tiny glimpses of warmth that make you stay, even when everything else can be painful. And when you're an empath, you're especially vulnerable to this. Why? Because you're constantly giving people the benefit of the doubt. You see their potential, you remember the good moments, you're willing to take on their pain if it means keeping that relationship alive. Here's the hardest part. Sometimes empathy becomes so central to our identity that we don't know who we are without being needed. We define our worth by how helpful we are, how calm we are, how well we can hold space for others. We become the fixer, the emotional caretaker, the one who can always be counted on to make it okay. But that also can become a trap because when your value is tied to how much you do for others, it's easy to lose sight of how little you're getting in return. Empathy is a strength, it's beautiful. But when it's given without limits, when it's used to prove your worth or keep your peace at your own expense, it can slowly erode your sense of self. And that is exactly what many narcissists latch onto. So if you ever thought, why do I keep attracting these kinds of relationships? The answer might not be that there's anything wrong with you. It might be that your empathy has been overextended, conditioned, even exploited. And you know what? Now it might just be time to reclaim it. Let's get into the heart of the storm, the dynamic between empaths and narcissists. Why does this connection happen so often? And why is it so hard to break? Let's start with this truth. Narcissists are often deeply drawn to empaths. Why? Because empaths are everything they're not: emotionally available, compassionate, intuitive, and willing to understand. To a narcissist, that kind of energy is irresistible. It's like an endless well they can pull from. Admiration, support, attention, forgiveness, it's all there. And for someone who constantly needs validation, that's gold. Empaths also tend to tolerate things longer than most. We can explain away red flags. We assume people are doing the best they can. We lean into compassion before confrontation. Narcissists count on this. They bank on your patience, your softness, your desire to keep the peace. And on the flip side, why do empaths stay? It's not weakness, it's not naive, it's that deeply ingrained desire to understand, to help, and to believe in the goodness underneath someone's pain. You might think maybe they're wounded, or if I just love them the right way, they'll change. You see their potential. You remember the version of them who once made you feel special, seen, and adored. But here's the cycle that can start to unfold. And it's not always love, it can be manipulation. It starts with love bombing, where you're flooded with affection, validation, gifts, attention. Love bombing, it feels magical. And then suddenly the energy shifts: devaluation. You're criticized, blamed, picked apart. Nothing you do feels enough. And in comes the gaslighting. They make you question your memory, your reactions, your reality. You might feel confused, unstable, even like you are the problem. And then trauma bonding. Your body, your heart, your mind all start tying this intensity to love. And so you stay, hoping for the person they were at the beginning of this cycle to return. And one of the most powerful tools narcissists use against empaths is guilt. Now, they know you don't want to hurt people, they know you overthink, so they flip the script, make it seem like you are cold, you're cruel, you're giving up too easily. They might say things like, You're you're not as kind as you say you are. Oh, if you really cared, you wouldn't leave me like this. You know what? You're just like everyone else who abandoned me. And suddenly you're trapped in this emotional war. Not because you don't see the damage, but because you don't want to be the bad one. But here's the truth: walking away from abuse is not cruelty. Setting boundaries is not unkindness. Empathy does not mean enduring harm, and being a good person doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to prove it. The empath narcissist dynamic isn't just about personalities, it's also about patterns. And once you can name them, you can start breaking them. So let's be clear: empathy isn't the problem. Empathy is not your weakness. It's not something to shut down or feel ashamed of. It is a gift, one that allows you to connect, to love deeply, fiercely, to hold space for others in a way that's rare and so needed in this world. But when that empathy comes without boundaries, when it pulls you so deep into someone else's experience that you start to abandon yourself, that's when it can become a vulnerability. This is where so many of us get stuck. We confuse empathy with self sacrifice. We think that to be loving means to give and never say enough. We mistake people pleasing and emotional caretaking for kindness. We assume that being a good person means absorbing pain, fixing others, and holding it all together, even if it's destroying us. Empathy without boundaries isn't compassion, it's codependency. True empathy allows space for both people to matter, them and you. And you can hold deep care for someone without losing yourself in their chaos. This is where the idea of compassionate detachment comes in. It's learning to say, I see you, I care about what you're going through, but I am not going to drown with you. It is the practice of staying grounded in your own truth while still holding space for someone else's. It's being able to love without being consumed. And when you begin to reclaim your empathy, when it's held with intention instead of guilt or fear, you can begin to realize how powerful it actually is. Your empathy makes you intuitive. You pick up on what's not being said. Creative. You imagine and feel deeply. Loving. You give from the heart, not obligation. And wise, because you felt so much and you can learn from all of that. Empathy isn't about being soft, it's about being real. It's fierce, it's resilient, and when it's protected with healthy boundaries, it becomes one of your greatest sources of strength. You can love people and love yourself, and you can be present for others without disappearing in the process. So now that we've explored the power and the pain that can come with being an empath a little, let's talk about what healing could actually look like. Because it is so important to know, you don't have to stop being empathetic to protect yourself. You don't have to harden your heart to be safe. You just need to learn how to steer a little. Empathy isn't the problem, it just needs direction, boundaries, and care. So let's start with boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls. Think of them more like bridges that allow safe connection. Setting a boundary might sound something like, I do care, but I can't take this on right now. I'm here to support you, but I also need space for myself. I'm not available for conversations that leave me feeling drained. Some of these might feel uncomfortable to listen to, but these are not selfish statements. They're self honoring ones. And the more you practice these statements, the more you can start to notice when your empathy is being exploited. When someone expects you to carry their emotional weight, but never returns that care. And that might look like feeling responsible for someone else's moods, always being the one to fix it, feeling guilty when you say no or even think about saying no. When those things come up, check with yourself. Ask, am I being loving here or am I abandoning myself to avoid conflict or discomfort? And this is where self trust becomes essential because your body, your intuition, your gut, they know. You might feel it as tension in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a sense of unease. Don't override those signs. They are your cues and they matter. Building that connection back to yourself might mean slowing down and asking, what do I need right now? What is truly mine to carry and what isn't? And how do I want to feel in my relationships? And then we restore balance, not just emotionally, but physically, spiritually, energetically. A couple of practices that can help restore that balance and help you understand journaling. This can help you process emotions that might not be yours, writing them down and rereading them. Take some time alone. Take some deep breaths. Return to the center of your being. Just be in the moment and feel. Energy clearing. So, something that could be, say, a walk in nature or a nice warm to hot shower. meditation, anything that helps you shake off what might not be yours. Try to reconnect with your body, release some of that stress, and feel safe inside yourself. So here's what I want to leave you with. Empathy is not your weakness. It is your compass. And you don't need to get rid of it. You just need to learn how to steer with it. You can be soft and strong. You can care and also say no. And you are allowed to be there for others without disappearing in the process. Your empathy can be your superpower, and it is a superpower, but use it to learn to guide yourself home too. As we are nearing the end of the episode today, I just kind of want to gently recap a little of what we explored. We talked briefly about what empathy is and how it's not just about feeling others' emotions, but also about what we can do with those feelings. We looked at how many of us become empaths through survival, not choice, and how that has shaped the way we love, give, and sometimes overextend. We talked briefly about the empath narcissist dynamic, how it can form, and why it can feel so hard to leave. And maybe most importantly, we touched on reframing empathy, not as something to be fixed, but as something to be honored, protected, and guided. I'll be honest, this whole thing has been a big personal journey for me. There was a time when I thought being empathetic meant always being available, always being vulnerable, always being the one who holds space, feels everything for everyone, even when I personally was crumbling. But I'm learning that I still can be kind and caring without ignoring myself. And that lesson, while often painful, at times has been deeply freeing. So I want to leave you with a few questions to reflect on. If journaling works for you, you can journal these, sit with them quietly, or come back to them later when you have space. Think about them, write them down, draw something out, whatever works for you. Gentle invitations to check in with yourself. So, how do I know when I'm being empathetic versus when I might be overextending myself? What physical or emotional signals show up in my body when I've gone beyond my limit? Do I feel guilty when I set boundaries or relieved? And what might that tell me? Am I trying to help others because they need it or because I feel responsible for their feelings? What would it look like to care deeply without losing myself in someone else's emotions? Who in my life respects my empathy and my boundaries? Who expects one without the other? What version of empathy was modeled for me growing up, if any? Was it healthy or self sacrificing? What do I fear would happen if I stopped rescuing or absorbing everyone else's pain? And how can I honor my empathy and protect my peace at the same time? As always, if this episode spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If there are parts of this episode that we covered today that you'd love me to deep dive into more, please feel free to DM me, leave a comment, email me, share your own experience or questions with empathy. You're not alone in this. So many of us are learning to navigate this tender yet powerful trait in a way that includes ourselves in the equation. Until next time, take care of you, take care of your heart, something that is always worth protecting. Thank you for listening and spending time with me today. I appreciate you all so much. If you haven't already, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and follow me on social media. Your support means the world.
Plus, it really helps a podcast grow and reach more people like us. And don't forget, I'd love to hear from you. Send me your questions, share your story, or just drop by to say hello at vivvance@gmail.com. Until next time, remember, healing isn't linear, life can be unpredictable, but you are never alone in this journey. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.